Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this lunch with EFE, the Education for Employment. And we are going to learn so much more about this organization. I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Maysoon Zayid. I'm a Palestinian comedian, disability advocate, and writer living in the diaspora in the great state of New Jersey in the United States. I was born with cerebral palsy, and education is really a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I've dedicated a large portion of my life to the mainstreaming of disabled students globally. And I'm really interested to learn more today about education in the Middle East and North Africa and about inclusion and accessibility. And I'm joined by two spectacular sources. First, we have Ron Bruder, who is the founder and chairman of EFE. And get this, he was on Time's top 100 most influential people in the world, the entire world list. I'm number one on that list. Ron is kind of jealous. We sometimes fight about it, but yes, he was on that list. So we're joined by Ron Bruder. And then we have an actual EFE success story, all the way from Palestine, Ramallah, which is like the New York City of Palestine. We have Saja Abuammoneh, and she's going to tell us all about her experience with the EFE and convince you that it's not just an elaborate money laundering scheme like so many things in the world are. She's going to tell you about how it's the real deal and why we should all amplify, support, and join in on the efforts with the EFE. So Ron and Saja, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure, Maysoon. Happy to be here. Delighted.
Ron, I want to start with you. Why did you create EFE? And in 2 minutes or less, this is like a challenge, in 2 minutes or less, tell me, what does it do?
Okay. I started EFE because it became apparent that the youth in the Middle East did not have the opportunities that I did. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in less than a middle-class family, but we all had opportunities. If we worked hard and we were reasonably smart, we could make something of ourselves. I go to the East and I see people just as smart, just as hungry, and they don't have the opportunity that we do. And I felt if we're going to have a peaceful planet, a coherent planet, it was urgent. It was imperative that the youth in the Middle East have the same opportunities that I did. And so I started EFE to connect youth to the labor force. We work through local affiliates. So when you go to Palestine, you don't see Ron Bruder, you don't see American staff. You see Palestinians, Palestinian chair, Palestinian CEO, Palestinian staff, and they figure out by working with employers what the needs are. We don't know that in the US. We're not smart enough. And so we rely on each local affiliate, and there are 9 of them now, to tell us where the jobs are. And we do training that's very geared to the needs of the labor market. One of the sad things about the Middle East is high school graduates have lower unemployment than college graduates. So many times you go to college, you get a 4-year degree, and you can hang it on the wall and use it as wallpaper, but it doesn't get you a job.
Right.
We give them the training that does. 79% of our graduates enter the labor force. 57% of those are women. We have a very strong advocate for getting women in the labor force, because sadly enough, in the Middle East, only 18% of the women are actually gainfully employed.
And what's the percentage at EFE?
57%.
Wow.
And we really pushed that one.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, but it's worth it, quite frankly. When you give a woman a job and you make her the breadwinner at home, it really changes the dynamic. Women bring home 90% of their paycheck, which is a lot more than the men do in the Middle East and everywhere else in the world. And so we're focused on getting as many women into the labor force as possible, because that creates a social change. It's a real change in the dynamic. To date, we've trained about 132,000. And our goal is to make that number much higher and ultimately change the educational system in the region. But it's unacceptable to have an institution doing training where at the end of the training, there's not a job.
How long does the average training last?
The programs are all over the lot, sometimes from a matter of 3 weeks to 6 months.
And these trainings are free to the students?
Yes, they are.
Wow. Okay.
Sometimes, to be clear. We will charge a nominal amount to join the program, not enough to dissuade anybody. They pay more for lunch. But it's nice that they put something on, a couple of dollars,
Mhm.
literally. They can say, okay, I'm helping.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have the needs.
Saja, how did you hear about this program? How did you hear about it? What was your first thought? And what was the application process like?
Actually, EFE first is a very well-known organization in Palestine. Every fresh graduate knows about EFE. I heard about the program. I applied for it through Facebook. I saw the post, and I was
How did you know it wasn't fake news?
I saw it on
It's on
EFE
Facebook.
website.
Nothing good comes from Facebook.
I saw it in the official EFE page, Facebook page. I was at first I was not sure I'm going to join, not do want to join or don't want to join, but my friend encouraged me to join them or apply for EFE because she was also an alumni of one of the graduates of EFE. So I decided to really apply for the program. I applied through a link they attached or they put uh, on the post. They asked for some essential information, and that was the process. After that, after a few
Saja, what level of education had you completed at this point
at this point or back then,
when you applied?
when I applied, I finished my BA in English Language and Literature. So I was a university graduate, but I was fresh back then.
Yeah.
What was your other question? Sorry.
I just wanted to know how it changed your path.
Yeah, actually, it changed a lot. Even until this moment, I feel that the change or the effect of the EFE or the program itself. When I applied, I told you I was a fresh graduate.
Yeah.
So I can say that before EFE, there was Saja, and after EFE, we have another Saja. So we have after and before. Before I was a little bit shy. I don't know what is the communications, what are the communication skills that are needed to in our workplace or in the market. The EFE program gave us all essential communication skills, even organization skills and time management skills that is needed to everyone who wants to achieve his goal. I was looking for being or to achieve my dream as a translator. So because of the skills they taught us, time management, organization skills, they helped me how to dedicate my time, even use my time effectively to become the translator that I am right now. Even in the current job I am working at right now or these days, when I was at the interview, they asked me what skills do you have and how you get these skills. I told them that I took a training at EFE. They taught us all the skills that I have mentioned before.
Yeah.
Even I like what I like the most about EFE program is that they give us an opportunity to work for a company, and
Yeah.
I worked for that company for almost like 7 months. And actually, that opportunity was affected so much my career right now. It gave me the essential things that I need in my career.
That's fantastic. Ron, I am really curious about this. It sounds like EFE is a miracle worker. You're telling me that you have been able to teach Arabs time management? I don't believe it. I've never seen that in action. And I could see that really being a great quality and an employee, having never actually witnessed it myself. Ron, you're not just in Palestine, right?
We're in 9 countries:
Can you tell me where?
Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, Yemen, Gaza. We're in Tunisia. We're in Saudi Arabia. We're in the Emirates.
Nice.
We're in Syria.
What was the last one?
Algeria.
Algeria. Fantastic.
Yep.
So I am the self-proclaimed winner of the Oppression Olympics. I'm a woman of color, I'm disabled, I'm, divorced, I'm Muslim, and diversity and accommodations and integration really, really matter to me. What is EFE doing to make their programs accessible to disabled laborers? And what are you doing? You told us a little bit about the numbers with women, but what about other minorities in the Middle East? What are you doing to make sure that the least privileged are being integrated into these programs?
Well, first of all, our programs are oriented towards the least privileged. The people that have WASTA, that have relationships, that have an inner track, we don't work with them. We work with the ones that can't get there without us, that need us to get into the market. We work with people that have a disability and mobility. We teach our handicapped facilities, so the bathrooms are handicapped, the workspace are handicapped. We're a very strong advocate for handicapped, whether or not mobility, visual, hearing. It's harder with hearing and visual, but we do some of that. Just takes more time.
And maybe if we get some great partnerships and advocacy and have more people amplifying the message, we can find those partners necessary to make the programs accessible for, people who are deaf and low vision and blind.
From your lips to God's ears, no matter what.
Inshallah. No WASPA policy though. Uh-oh. God has struck our white savior. No, Ron is back. Okay, you disappeared for a split second. Saja, what do you want the virtual audience to know about EFE that they don't already
know? I want them to know that EFE is not just an organization that is looking for people to enjoy, to let them join their trainings, but they also work hard to improve the people that join their trainings. So I encourage everyone that have the opportunity to join EFE, do not miss this opportunity, because it will change your life as they did to me.
We will coach.
Even if the training is not physical, my friend had a virtual training. It was actually the same as the physical one.
I was just about to ask Ron that. How did it change? March 2020, you get a phone call and they're like, hey, deadly pandemic's on its way. How did that change EFE? And what have you learned and implemented since then?
Well, when COVID struck, it could have been the death knell for it. It could have put us totally out of business, because everything we were doing was based on classrooms with teachers and students. And that overnight, as we all know, disappeared. That's the bad news. The good news is we learned how to build curriculum and deliver curriculum virtually. So immediately we geared up, and we had a short down period, a matter of months, but we were quickly back in the game when we were training online. One of the nice things about developing that skill is we're not limited by the number of teachers, number of classrooms, number of chairs. We're limited by the number of students, the amount of funding, and the biggest limitation, Maysoon, is the number of employers. There's one thing that change. We need more employers to get involved, to work with us, to enable the youth there to get jobs. We have over 3,000 employee relationships now, but I'd like to be able to say next year we have 6,000 employee relationships.
Can you give us an example of the types of employers that you work with?
Sure, a lot of hospitality. A huge amount of work in the hospitality sector. We do a huge amount in the tourist sector. We also train entrepreneurs in starting their own businesses. We teach them the skills. We teach them, sorry, that's getting a little tricky. We connect them with capital, and we get them off and running so they can build businesses and employ even more people.
So finding employers to partner with you is the number one obstacle. What else are the obstacles that you're facing?
Resources. Like any other foundation, the more resources they have, the more programs we can build, the more teachers we can hire, the more youth we can place. So I spend a lot of my time on fundraising. I didn't think I'd be doing that, but you look around and what do we need more of? We need capital to build programs.
And the majority of your fundraising is done through donations on your site?
No, minority of our
Ah, okay.
donations are people that know us and deal with us directly.
Okay, so
And the US
people,
government,
if someone on this phone call just happens to know Jeff Bezos and he wants to give you $100 million like he gave Van Jones, what would they do? We call a number and someone answers us, or do we email EFE? What do we do?
EFE. You can email EFE very easily. My email address, EFE, Ron Bruder at EFE.org. And talk to anybody.
Yeah, EFE.org is a good, easy website to
Very navigable.
recall. Yeah. So we're going to be wrapping this up very soon, but Saja, I wanted to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about the career that you found. What do you do now? Who do you translate for? You told us about the skills that EFE armed you with, but I would love to hear about what type of employment do you have and how hard is it to find a job like yours in Palestine right now? Because you know, the list of countries that Ron rattled off, one of the obstacles that we all have to admit to is a lot of these places are war torn and there's strife. And I think having the virtual component is such a great way to enable people to get there, but we still sometimes don't have electricity. So I'm just curious as to like, what is your job? How rare is it to do this work? And like, have you had any like upward mobility? Are you the same as your parents were? Or do you have more education? I'd like to know how it's working out.
Okay. Actually, I graduated with a bachelor degree in English, as I said in the beginning. When I graduated, it was hard to find a job. We have so many fresh graduates, but the jobs are few. So we really struggle to find a job. But actually, even we are in a difficult situation, but we never give up. We keep trying until we find what we are looking for. I kept looking. I worked in many jobs, not many, but different, more than one. I worked as a public relation officer. I worked as call center or customer service representative. I worked as a freelancer for like 2 years. Then at the end, the last one, I work as a coordinator for the language services and translation department at Ritage. This job in particular, I'm a coordinator, so I have to communicate with two parties. So the core skill that is needed in this job is the communication. You have to know how to communicate with others. So this skill in particular, I learned from EFE. So I would like to thank Ron first and EFE, the whole staff of EFE that gave me the opportunity to learn everything I learned from them. The difference between us, the youth, and the older generation is we have two different situations, and now it's way harder than before. Even the occupation was before and is still until now, but the occupation these days are harsher on us. So in the past they did not treat them as they treat us now. I feel like I don't know. I don't know what the difference between the generation before and now, but I feel the generation before it was, I don't know, they gave up, or I don't know, they do not what we call it in English, resist or resist. I guess we resist more. That's why they are harsher on us. So we face many obstacles than before. Even the spaces of the space of Palestine is getting smaller. That's why we do not have. I'm sure that is related to the job that is open to us. So before they were more, they can move more freely, but now we could not move even from one city to another. We face, as you said, first we face checkpoints. I guess this is the most difficult situation that
Right here, we found a way to circumvent those checkpoints by having virtual, and maybe the other generation would have been more successful if they had had EFE. So
yeah,
before we run out of time, I do want to ask you, do you feel that they also helped you gain skills as a woman in leadership? I know that often I'm the only woman in the spaces that I work in, and it's very interesting to not just learn how to communicate, but to how to be a true leader. Is that a skill that you feel you gained in the training also?
yeah, they taught us something about teamwork and how to lead this team. Maybe me myself, Saja, I don't feel that I have the skills to be a leadership, but I am sure that this training maybe helped other to be leaderships because they gave us the skills. But me myself, I'm not a leadership. I don't feel that like my personality is a leader
Well,
actually.
that's
But
okay.
they
It's
have us
great to
something.
know. Yeah, it's
But
great to
they
know
give,
every leader needs their support system. So if you know that that's where you're
yes,
strongest, that's great. And to be able to have the independence of an income despite such hard circumstances is incredibly inspiring, but I can tell how much hard work you put behind it. Ron, I want to give you the final word after this like really interesting conversation. What have we missed? What's the last thing you want to tell us? The last word goes to Saja because she's a woman, and obviously I have to end with a woman's voice. But before the last word, what do you still want to tell us?
One of the things what she really got out of our program is the intangible of self-confidence.
Mm.
Look at youth before they get into the program, and I shake their hand, and they look down on the floor. They're kind of like a wet fish, and they can't look me in the eye. They go through our program, and suddenly they think they went to West Point. They believe in themselves. They go out with a great amount of confidence and vigor.
Ron, I have to interrupt you. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Ron is not training militarily. The comparison to West Point, he actually meant the confidence of a Princeton graduate.
Yes, fine. We're very peaceful. We do this in the interest of global peace. My final statement is if you like what we do, what Lily you've learned, please look at our website, tune in, and see if it's something that's worthy of your time. We think we are.
And we want you to share it. After you've seen this, go on the website and share it with people. Send an email, put it on your social media links, tell other people about it. And if you happen to know an employer in one of those 9 countries that keeps telling you, I can't find any workers, they never show up on time, I have no one with the skills, let's introduce them to Ron too. So we can be brokers of both of those sides of bringing in resources, bringing in employers, and spreading the word. Saja, last word goes to you.
thank you. Many thoughts in my mind, but I would like to thank everyone in EFE for giving me this opportunity, for teaching me everything I need. Also, I would like to say that nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Maysoon. Also, Ron, nice to see you today. And I wish you all the best.
Inshallah, we all meet again in the Quds very soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, for sharing and supporting EFE.